So I'm just going to start with the question and answers that are in the Q&A box. And the first one, this referred to what I'm trying to say, the overview that was shown by Bobby of the US Mark site in the McMurtry. And the question was, on when you were showing McMurtry, was the green for the wetlands just the color used for the picture, or was there evidence of eutrophication within the wetland surface waters? So, I mean, Bobby, I don't think you doctored the picture, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, actually, it's a great question. And like 20 minutes before the presentation started, I also was questioning why it was so green. But I went back and I got on Google Earth and I double checked that. I mean, that is the actual color of vegetation from when that picture was pulled from Google Images in June of 2024. I was curious, so I started flipping back through historical images of the same site. It is not always that beautifully green and lush. As far as the actual data goes, I don't know that I have seen the data of vegetation collected from McMurtry yet, so I can't fully answer the question, but that is the actual color of the vegetation at that time.
Perfect. All right. And then Kathleen had another question. Again, with your data that you showed, the spike in February for the ammonia collected at the sampler, did that reflect management practices like dumping of lagoons or pulling of plugs, anything like that? Go ahead.
Oh, as far as I know, it doesn't coincide with any management practices. However, we had a couple of very windy storms come through, just like one right after the other around that time. So we're still looking at the Met station data and analyzing the weather. But my inclination is that it probably has more to do with the weather we experienced during that time than management practices. But we'll also be checking with our feedlot managers to make sure that something didn't happen we weren't aware of.
Right. As far as we know, they weren't cleaning at that time. We do also make notes when we go up to the McMurtry wetland, if we're getting a strong, just a anecdotal type thing, if we're getting a strong odor off of the swine that day. So that's another note that we can go back and check and see if that would have been contributing that day as well. But all right, moving down through the questions here. Okay, this is probably for Dan, because it's talking about the Iowa site. So there does not appear to be a sensor southeast of the wastewater ponds in Iowa. Was it due to funding, permissions, or something else?
As I understand it, some of their chief obstacles were trying to get permissions and establish relationships with the folks nearby. So there isn't one down southeast of those wastewater ponds, unfortunately. So.
All right. So our next question. Is there any information about the poultry farm? How many sampling sites and how far away from the parameter of the chicken farm? And is the farm a broiler or a layer?
I'll try and unless you know more about it, Mindy, I
No, go
know
ahead.
very little. That site just literally came on within the last couple months, and they're undergoing, I know, some different management changes. Was the last kind of monthly report that we had from them. I have a feeling it's the same number of 20 to 25 passive sampler locations, one Met station, and biogeochemical data being collected. But I think they've only been able to go out there probably 2 or 3 times to collect that biweekly data. Did you have a different impression of that, Mindy?
No, other than that, as you were saying, they were changing the management. So I'm fairly certain that it's a layer farm because they're moving it to the free range. So I was going to add that in there, but we will follow up with Phil and get a question, a good answer to that for you. So, all right. Next question from Adam. Will you calculate nitrogen taking off the fields as grain or silage, nitrogen fertilizer or manure additions, and any volatilization from that? And then look at yield maps to compare crop response.
That would be excellent to have all those different larger nitrogen pools figured out. We are getting some of that data from just the plant samples that are collected locally near those samplers, but I would say probably Clay Center has the best data set on some of those larger nitrogen pools, specifically from crops and also from the manure and side of it. Mindy, what can you answer to that?
I mean, I would just say, yeah, obviously, because we are a research site, we do have that information available. We haven't necessarily looked into that, but that could be a great addition, some of that we do have. And then as far as the crop response, I would just mention what we were shared about the Iowa site, that he was actually able to detect progressively higher concentrations of ammonium, right? It was on ammonium in his soil the closer he got to the finishing barn. And he was going to follow up with the producer to see if they saw differences in yield response off of that. That's correct, right? I think that's what he had told us. So, Bobby, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I would love to. So this is actually a great question, and thank you for asking this. So for us at Bushland, we are unfortunately understaffed, but this is something that we would love to do, is to, in essence, we know that there is, for all intents and purposes, free fertilizer falling down on these irrigated circles of crops. We have heard from farmers there that they are using less fertilizer on those fields near our feedlot compared with those elsewhere. So we don't have an answer, in essence, how much money falls from the sky, so to speak, but we have means to do this, confirm with that kind of research that Dan and Mindy and Bobby was talking about, where, instead of us being on those public roads where the weeds and dirt is, actually being purposefully collecting samples from growing crops and irrigated circles. So I hope to have a chance to answer that question next season, potentially.
Yeah, I think that would be a really great addition to the project. Just while we're waiting to see if there's any other questions here, I would just remind you to please provide us feedback. So let us know how we've done by answering a few questions at the end of the survey. It's going to appear as you leave the webinar. So we want to thank everybody for that. We have a couple minutes if we have any other questions. If not, I would certainly like to thank all three of our speakers today, Dan Miller, Bobby Stromer, and Jacek Kozel. Really appreciate the time that you took to put the presentation together and share some of this exciting research that we're doing at USDA. So let's see, I'll just check over here in the chat box one more time and see if we have any more questions. And
there's one more in the Q&A.
Oh, one more in the Q&A that I missed? Okay, thank you for... Oh, actually, there's a couple. So, okay. All right, so we just answered, is there measurable crop differences in the outfall area? We're working on getting the answer to that. For the time-weighted average at the Texas site, are measurements conducted bi-weekly, like the Ammon sampling, or how often are the measurements conducted? And that is bi-weekly, right?
Yes, so we just like I believe all of the sites in this project, we aim for bi-weekly, every 2 weeks on the schedule, and that actually works well with the commercial partners, kind of, that they know that we will be out there. But weather plays big time, especially for us, where we go on dirt roads and mud and really get our fix on four-wheel drive out there in the sticks, as they call it here. And So sometimes we need to postpone just to be sane about being out there in the field. So sometimes it is occasionally, I would say maybe every 3 weeks. But we typically try to do collect data every 2 weeks.
Jacek, you do have a Picaro instrument at that site as well?
Yes, actually, in addition to Picaro, we have Los Gatos. These tend to be performing a little bit better than Picaro. Picaro has been great, wonderful, but it's great at everything that we can measure in one instrument. With Los Gatos, there are 2 instruments that are a little bit easier to calibrate specifically for each gas. Now, that's been our experience so far. So science-wise, they follow each other, but not exactly as expected. Sorry, Dan, I got perhaps well ahead of your question.
So we do have another question. Julie wanted to know, how far does the dry deposition fall? Is it half mile, 1 to 5 miles? And that's part of what we're trying to figure out. Jacek, yours go up to 2 miles, right?
Yes. And, and there are, I mean, it's not that simple per se. I mean, we know that farmers actually, for example, use manure from that very feedlot and apply it, or stockpile it to get ready for the season. So there are additional sources of nitrogen, just like and just regular application of anhydrous ammonia too. So there are other sources of ammonia in the air.
Yes. Okay, this question also is for you, Jacek. Is there any initial sense why your sensor 16 is so notably higher in all the other seasons? Because it doesn't really fall into the prevailing wind pattern, but just a question.
Yeah, yes, great question. I'm thrilled that whoever asked that question that noticed that. So yes, indeed, that site number 16 is a sort of a hot spot. We can bank on it almost all the time. And unfortunately, that drawing, that map redrawn location is not entirely correct. I mean, if I could redraw it, I would put it a little bit further to the north. And also the actual boundary of the feedlot would not be rectangular, meaning that in reality, that site number 16 is collecting among all of them like the largest load. There is the large stretch of the actual feedlot upwind, but also lagoons that are collecting runoff water, and so it's not surprising to see that one side is experiencing the largest concentrations of ammonia. Great question, so thank you.
And I see one more question here from LeMay. Are you planning to do flux measurements in addition to concentration measurements, which is important for the model evaluation?
So right now we only rely on measured concentrations. Same like in our case, it's 6 feet under above the ground consistently, and then relying on the 3D wind direction, wind velocity, environmental type of data to back calculate those measured concentrations with the weather into the actual source, which would be that 1 CAFO that we are working with. So we will eventually get flux numbers for our CAFO, we will be using that intensive air quality monitoring that many of us are in the middle of as we speak, to superimpose those diurnal, real-time measured ammonia concentrations to that really time-weighted average, typical biweekly periods that our numbers represent.
And that data will also be available at Ames or at the Iowa site and at the Nebraska site as well. So, all right. So just one other comment was Kathleen was wondering if there was like a leachate lagoon or something near that site 16, but you kind of described where that was. So I think maybe.
There is some slope to our terrain in Texas, and it generally slopes to the south. So there is a series of lagoons sort of hugging, if you will, or bordering the southern edge of the feedlot.
All right. And that's where ours would be. Our wastewater treatment is on the south side of the feedlot at US Mark too. So, all right. I guess I don't see any other questions.